Jack, is it much of a wrench deciding to give up motor racing after, what, 23 years?
Well, of course, this is a big wrench, Alan, and it's something I've been not looking forward to for a long time. I knew it had to come one day, and I'm certainly not really looking forward to it.
Well, I said 23 years. That takes you back to, what, 1947? Well, what were you doing then?
Well, I started off midget car racing on cinder tracks in Australia, which is the sort of racing that's done a lot in America and Australia. It was towards the end of 1947, what we call the 47-48 season out there, because the season used to start about September and go till about April. And that was really my start, and I had about 6 years of cinder track driving before I ventured out into road racing.
But didn't you first start climbing a hill in the midget car, if I remember rightly?
Well, actually, that was the thing that really got me into it, I suppose. Yes, I was invited to a hill climb at the Hawkesbury Hill Climb near Sydney, just to demonstrate a midget car on the hill climb with the Light Car Club of Australia. And I think I took about 5 or 6 seconds or more off their hill record. And at the time, they didn't expect this, of course, and they thought, God, you know, we can't have this. So I was disqualified, actually, because the car only had 2-wheel brakes, which is all we used to use on the speedway. So then, of course, this got my back up, and I thought, right, well, if that's the case, I'll go and put 4-wheel brakes on it. So I went home and fitted 4-wheel brakes to the car, and went down to Rob Roy in 1951 and entered the Australian Hill Climb Championship. And of course won that with the car, which then sort of got me interested in road racing cars, and I moved on from then and bought a Mark IV Cooper, which I also used a little bit in hill climbs, but mainly started then on circuit racing, which was really the beginning of my road racing career, which would have been 1952.
But after 3 years, then you came to Britain, and we saw you in action on British circuits for the first time, and I well remember it because of your style of driving. It's matured a bit since then, but perhaps you'd agree that it at least looked a bit hairy.
Well, I think probably after driving so many years on cinder tracks, hanging the tail out was really the way that, or the only way to get around a cinder circuit. And of course, having the tail hanging out was really my style of driving. That's the way I thought it should be done. But of course, I soon learnt in Europe that the type of road racing and more sophisticated cars that we were driving, that this wasn't the way to do it.
But where did you have your first drive in England?
My first event was at Goodwood on Easter Monday, 1955, and probably I made my first big mistake in motor racing, really coming to England by not bringing the Cooper Bristol car that I had in Australia at the time, because I was influenced by other people that it'd be far better to sell the car in Australia and buy a better one in England, and I found this was very difficult, and finished up with a car, of course, that was inferior to the one I had in Australia, purely because any car that was really good in this country obviously wasn't for sale.
But after that, of course, you did join the Cooper team, and I think everybody who knows anything about motor racing knows that you won 3 world championships. I've added up your score of Grand Prix victories, and it tots up to 14. Can you tell me, though, looking back, which was the race you most remember winning?
Well, I think probably the most exciting race I had was in 1959, when I won the Monaco Grand Prix. And being my first Grand Prix win, naturally this stuck in my mind for a long time, and was really a sense of achievement that every young driver really had an ambition for.
But what about Reims in 1966, that very hot day in the summer?
Yes, actually, from a whole career achievement, the fact of winning the first Grand Prix in a Brabham car at Reims at that time was probably the most satisfying race I think I've ever had. A sense of achievement, the fact that we've constructed a car and win the World Championship with it.
And of course this was done with an Australian-built engine.
That's right, and this even made the success even more satisfying from my point of view, because I'd been to Australia and convinced Repco that it was possible to build an engine and go and win Grand Prix racing, which I think was really backed in a very, very fine way. They really put their back into it and had the engine built in very, very quick time, which was the secret of the success of the thing, because we did actually get onto the circuit with a 3-litre engine with very, very good torque, although it didn't have a lot of maximum power, and very reliable at the right time. And we won 2 World Championships straight off with that, with myself winning in '66 and Dennis Holm in '67.
Now, this year you haven't been quite so successful, although you did win the South African Grand Prix, which was the opening round. You had quite a lot of problems this year.
Yeah, unfortunately, it hasn't been a lucky year for one thing. I've really should have won 3 other races this year, and silly things have happened to me. Like one, we had an ignition problem at the Race of Champions at the start of the year when leading and really couldn't be beaten. And also at Monaco, I got tangled up with slow cars and had a little incident at the last corner when leading that also, and put me back to second place. And then of course the British Grand Prix when I ran out of petrol on the last lap when leading also. So from the actual overall season, I think it's been pretty unlucky.
But it isn't these disappointments that have made you decide to retire, because you've had disappointments before.
Yeah, actually I've had many years of disappointment, really, and I almost retired at the end of last year, in fact, and we were actually talking to Jack Brabham about the possibility of him driving in my place in the team. And of course when this event didn't happen and Chapman finished up with Rent, I decided to do one more year, and at that time I had made my mind up that it was only going to be one more year.
Now, in a racing career stretching over such a long period, more than 2 decades, you fought against all the top drivers in the world. Of those, who would you pick out as the greatest?
Well, actually, I think the greatest as far as a name is concerned is probably Fangio, is the one that I've driven with, but I think the one that I probably learnt more from was Sterling Moss. Moss was right at his heyday in those days, and it was a very, very hard, aggressive driver, and driving with him I think taught me a lot.
He was, of course, very professional in his approach in the days when quite a number of drivers weren't so professional.
Well, I think probably Sterling was the first of the real professional drivers. Yeah, the real hard professional driver.
He was a very hard man to beat.
Very hard, yes.
Tell me, Jack, looking back over your career, what do you think really is the makeup of a really top driver? What are the essentials?
Well, first of all, he has to have whatever's inbuilt in a man to taking motor racing. He then must have a very, very good sense of judgment. He must be in complete control of his ability. In other words, he must know just how far he can go. And I think this is really the main 2 things that you must start with.
But tell me, you're 44 and you've been driving very well this year, although you've had your incidents of bad luck. But does age make all that much difference?
No, I don't think age makes a lot of difference, actually. In fact, as far as I myself is concerned, I feel that I'm just as competitive today as I was 10 years ago. And I enjoy driving just as much as I did then. But this doesn't apply to everybody, I know. I think you can take any sportsman, really, in any sport. it purely depends on the individual, the physical and mental outlook of the person concerned, and some people can go on to a ripe old age, like Fangio, for instance, who went to the age of 47, and other people might want to retire from the sport at 35. Age doesn't really necessarily be a guide.
This year, of course, has been particularly bad, and from the point of view of the tragedies we've had on the circuits, and we both lost quite a few friends. Do you ever feel, during your racing career, do you ever feel fear?
Actually, the thing that really spoils motorsport, I don't think anybody's had more enjoyment out of motorsport than what I have, probably, but the thing that does spoil it, occasionally we do lose a friend, which is a pretty bitter blow at the time. And I think what this does for us really is make us respect the sport that we're in. And I think the essential thing is that the drivers like myself treat the motorsport as being a dangerous sport, and bear this in mind at all times. And it's more essential to drive within your limits at all times.
Now, Jack, what are you going to do with your retirement? Are you going to settle back and have a rather more easy time?
No, I don't think I can have an easier time, but I'm hoping, of course, to be able to spend more time with my family. As you know, motor racing is a very demanding sport and requires it every hour of the day that you can give it. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to spend a lot more time with my family and also with other business interests that I have.
Where are you going to base yourself?
Well, actually, I'm moving the family back to Australia, as they're very keen to go back there, but obviously I have business interests in England and Australia, and at the moment I often go back to Australia on a business trip, and if I'm back in Australia, I'm sure I'm going to be often back in Europe on business trips, so it doesn't really matter which place I live in.
But what about the Brabham name in racing? You've been making cars since, 1962. Are these going to carry on?
Yes, actually, my partner in the business, Ron Toronak, is taking over majority shares of the business and continuing it as it's been run before. This doesn't mean to say that I'm entirely dropping out of it, but it relieves me the responsibility of having to be at every meeting, because if I finished up as a team manager, if you like, and went to every meeting again next year, my time available to devote to the family and my other activities really wouldn't change. I might as well be driving still. So I've had to really try and retract from the racing activity in some way, and this was really the only way. And Ron, of course, will be continuing in Grand Prix racing next year, and the cars will continue to be called Brabhams.
But won't it be very difficult indeed when you see a new Brabham car rolling out onto the circuit? Won't it be very difficult not to want to put your helmet on and give it a try out and see if you can develop it?
Very difficult indeed. In fact, obviously this is a spot where I would be very valuable to the team, really, to be able to drive these cars. But I've found from past experience that testing and developing motor cars is probably just as dangerous or more dangerous than actual motor racing, and it has to be treated as such, which means that you must be on the ball. And racing driving, I think, is a thing that you've got to keep at and do often. It's not the sort of thing you can come back and do occasionally. I think this is the part that would make it dangerous.
So far as sitting in the cockpit of competition cars is concerned, this is the complete break.
It certainly looks that way, Alan, yes.
Well, I can only wish you the very best of luck, Jack.
Thank you, Alan.